The world is hell, driven by two forces, influence and money. If there's better story to be told about power, only one man appears. Jeffrey Epstein
has shared some devastating news from hospital. The 41-year-old posted a photo saying she's been given just 4 days to live after a serious car accident in Perth. In a social media post, she begged to see her children one last time and said she's suffering and Exactly 1 week ago, more than 24 survivors of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein sent an open letter to Republican Senators John Cornyn and Tom Tillis.
Photos of President Trump with half-naked young women. Do you know if the FBI found those photographs in their search of Jeffrey Epstein's safe or premises or otherwise? Have you?
In August 2019, one of the world's most infamous prisoners was found dead inside one of America's most secure jails. The cameras failed. The guards weren't watching. His cellmate had been removed. Within hours, the internet exploded with one question. Was this really a suicide or something much bigger? But to understand why millions still question his death, we have to go back decades to a young man who somehow convinced presidents, billionaires, royalty, scientists, and celebrities to trust him. In this documentary, we will go down the rabbit hole to cover the whole story, but at the end of this video, you'll finally know who is involved, how, and why. Without wasting time, let's dive in. Before Jeffrey Epstein became one of the most infamous men in modern history, he was simply another boy growing up in Brooklyn, New York. In the early 1970s, Jeffrey Epstein landed a teaching position at the prestigious Dalton School in Manhattan, one of New York City's most exclusive private schools. It was an unusual appointment. Dalton was known for hiring highly qualified educators, many with impressive academic backgrounds. Epstein, however, had never earned a college degree, yet he was hired to teach mathematics and physics.
Compromised by acne, I mean, he was really, nobody. And Jeffrey was a very, very good math student, but everything about him had a certain, it may have been shyness, but it was almost a super silly. Epstein, back at the time I went to school with him, told a classmate of ours that he would definitely be rich someday. But nobody could have ever envisioned that Jeffrey Epstein would turn into the villain that we
In 1976, Jeffrey Epstein left teaching behind and joined Bear Stearns as a junior trader. Rather than focusing solely on buying and selling stocks, Epstein specialized in helping affluent individuals navigate complicated financial situations, including tax strategies and estate planning. Only a few years after joining the firm,
Jeffrey Epstein emailed his former Bear Stearns boss and a close friend, saying they demanded a jail sentence for someone who had no criminal history, no violence, drugs, no position of authority. Then when they were confronted with an extensive brief as to why these statutes did not apply, they threatened to bring a money crime based on an illegal money transmitting business, even though no such business ever actually existed. Epstein's email revealed how incensed he was over a money laundering investigation happening alongside the federal sex crimes probe. Bloomberg News uncovered new details of the probe in a trove of 18,000 emails from Jeffrey Epstein's personal Yahoo account. The lead federal prosecutor on the case at the time, Marie Villafania, memo saying Epstein should be charged with money laundering and operating an unlicensed money transmittal business.
Epstein's career at Bear Stearns came to an abrupt end. After leaving Bear Stearns, Jeffrey Epstein didn't disappear from high society. Instead, he seemed to become even more connected. He established his own financial consulting business, claiming he specialized in managing the fortunes of ultra-wealthy clients. Before long, Epstein was attending private dinners, exclusive events, and gatherings filled with business leaders, politicians, royalty, academics, and celebrities. Photographs placed him alongside some of the most recognizable figures in the world. The question was, how? Who was introducing him to these people? And what exactly did he offer in return? Those questions would become even more difficult to answer as his wealth continued to grow. By the late 1980s and throughout the 1990s, Jeffrey Epstein's lifestyle had become extraordinary. He owned one of the largest private residences in Manhattan. He acquired luxury homes in Palm Beach, New Mexico, Paris, and a private island in the Caribbean. He traveled aboard private aircraft and employed a large staff to maintain his properties. Everything about his life suggested immense wealth, but there was one problem. No one could clearly explain where that wealth came from. Over the years, various explanations were offered. Some said he made his fortune advising billionaires. Others pointed to his relationship with retail billionaire Leslie Wexner, who entrusted Epstein with significant financial responsibilities for a period of time. Yet, even those explanations left many unanswered questions. Journalists, investigators, and the public continued asking the same question. As investigators would later discover, the answers were far darker than almost anyone imagined. For years, Jeffrey Epstein carefully built an image of success. To the outside world, he was a wealthy financier with luxurious homes, powerful friends, and an endless stream of influential visitors. But behind the gates of those estates, investigators later uncovered something far darker. According to court records, law enforcement investigations, and numerous victim accounts, Epstein operated a recruitment system designed to bring vulnerable teenage girls into his world. Rather than searching randomly, recruiters often looked for girls facing financial hardship or unstable family situations.
And by the end of the summer, as an 18-year-old girl, he goes like, I'm financing the agency. I gave him $1 million to Fur. You should come to my office in West Palm Beach or downtown Palm Beach, and you work for me as a secretary. What I was told, all I do is pick up the phone and say, Florida Science Foundation, may I help you?
Many were teenagers who needed money, transportation, or emotional support. The initial offer appeared simple, a small amount of money for what was described as a massage at one of Epstein's homes. To someone struggling financially, it sounded like an easy opportunity. But investigators say that first meeting was often only the beginning. According to prosecutors, Epstein's operation relied on trust, manipulation, and secrecy, not force alone. Many victims later described feeling trapped in a situation they hadn't fully understood when they first accepted the offer. The system wasn't chaotic, it was organized, and it appeared to grow with remarkable efficiency. One of the most disturbing aspects of the investigation was how consistent many victims' accounts were. According to testimony presented in court and investigative reporting, recruiters were often young women who had previously been exploited themselves.
Well, we found new video of Jeffrey Epstein. He appears to be in detention. We don't have context because when you're going through these files, we're not told when or where they happen. But this video appears to show Jeffrey Epstein in prison sending a covert video message to two women. We're not naming those women, although Epstein does mention their first names. This is what we found.
So Darren and I are sitting here. You can hear the echo. I'm pretending I'm talking to Darren. So, hi Darren. So, you guys having a good time? You can see I have a little sore on my face that I got from some black guy trying to kiss me. It's really disgusting. It is fun. Oh, it's really, oh. Anyway, I have pictures up on the wall. I had to borrow the Scotch tape to get the pictures on the wall. I'll talk to you guys later.
Some were encouraged to introduce friends, classmates, or acquaintances. In return, they were allegedly paid for each new person they brought in. Investigators described this as a referral system that allowed the network to expand without attracting immediate attention. By relying on personal recommendations instead of strangers, Epstein's organization created an environment where many victims initially believed they were entering a legitimate opportunity. As more young women were introduced, the cycle continued. What began as isolated encounters gradually evolved into something investigators believed had operated for years across multiple properties. The recruitment wasn't random, it followed a pattern, and that pattern would eventually become one of the strongest pieces of evidence against Epstein. As Jeffrey Epstein's wealth and influence grew, so did the scale of his operation. Investigators say the alleged abuse was not limited to a single home. His residences in Palm Beach, Manhattan, New Mexico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands were all examined during various investigations.
Money should not be able to buy you the power to get away with hurting people, and it's not normal. I don't care how rich you are. You have the privilege of being wealthy, great, fantastic. Do something great about it. Do something good with your money. I mean, how evil do people have to be to just let that happen? I don't understand it.
You know, Epstein's wealth was so vast. You know, the fact that he had this fleet of planes. We've heard a lot about the Lolita Express. What happened on the Lolita Express?
Everything that happened on the Lolita Express and his other planes was the same thing that happened in his bedrooms and the massage rooms, on the beach, wherever we were. The abuse did not stop because we're in the air. 95% of the time, there was always sex involved. Jeffrey couldn't take it.
Former employees, pilots, drivers, assistants, and household staff became part of a growing list of people interviewed by investigators over the years. Private aircraft transported guests between properties. Visitors came from around the world. While many people who visited Epstein have never been accused of any crime, the sheer number of influential figures connected to him intensified public scrutiny. Questions began to emerge. How could such an operation continue for years without being exposed? Were warning signs ignored? Or did Epstein's extraordinary wealth and influence shield him from accountability? Those questions would become impossible to avoid, because eventually someone spoke up, and this time investigators listened. The first major breakthrough came in 2005. A mother in Palm Beach contacted local police after her teenage daughter told her she had been approached to visit Jeffrey Epstein's mansion.
The Department of Justice released documents that exposed our names, our social security numbers, and deeply personal information. Survivors' identities were made public. Husbands learned about their wives' abuse for the first time. Children learned about the abuse of their mothers from reporters, from strangers on the internet, and in some cases, from other kids at school.
What initially appeared to be a single complaint quickly developed into something much larger. As detectives interviewed more young women, similarities began to emerge. Different names, different backgrounds, yet many described remarkably similar experiences. The Palm Beach Police Department launched an extensive investigation, gathering statements from multiple victims and witnesses. Detectives believed they had uncovered evidence of a far-reaching pattern. The case was eventually referred to federal authorities. What followed would become one of the most controversial legal battles in modern American history. Many believed the evidence pointed toward a sweeping prosecution. Instead, the outcome shocked investigators, victims, and the public alike. How could one of the most significant criminal investigations involving wealthy and influential circles end in a deal that many considered astonishingly lenient? That question would define the next chapter of Jeffrey Epstein's story. In 2006, what had begun as a single complaint had grown into one of the most extensive investigations in Palm Beach's history. Detectives spent months interviewing victims, gathering witness statements, and collecting evidence. As the case expanded, prosecutors believed they weren't dealing with isolated incidents, but with an alleged pattern that had operated for years. The Palm Beach Police Department recommended serious felony charges. Soon, the Federal Bureau of Investigation began its own inquiry. According to investigative records, federal prosecutors examined whether Epstein could face charges carrying decades in prison. For many investigators, it appeared the evidence was overwhelming. Victims had come forward independently. Their accounts shared striking similarities.
This is me.
This was me.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
Survivor.
I was 14 years old. I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17. 14 years old.
I suffered so much pain.
So much pain.
So much pain.
The investigation had gained momentum. Justice finally seemed within reach. But behind closed doors, something unexpected was happening. While detectives continued building their case, Epstein's legal team was building another. Not inside a courtroom, but at the negotiating table. In 2007, federal prosecutors entered negotiations with Jeffrey Epstein's attorneys. The result became one of the most controversial plea agreements in modern American legal history.
Could you please give us your name?
Jeffrey Epstein.
So I wanted him to realize I didn't care who he was, what his power was, what his status was. I was going to ask him the most embarrassing possible thing I could. Is it true, sir, that you have what's been described as an egg-shaped penis? He hears me ask the question. Watch him look at his lawyers like, can you believe he's asking me this? I had been the first lawyer to ask him any questions in the cases that had been filed. One witness described your penis as oval-shaped, thin and small towards the head portion. See, he's angry. He's ready to walk out the door, and then he sees that the attorneys are going to talk.
That serves no other purpose other than embarrass Mr. Epstein. It's just totally unethical, it's improper.
The purpose of that question is, how could a 14-year-old know what his private part looked like? That question was directly relevant to the claims in the case.
Instead of facing a federal trial on more serious charges, Epstein reached an agreement that allowed him to plead guilty in Florida state court to 2 offenses related to soliciting prostitution and procuring a minor for prostitution. The agreement also ended the federal criminal investigation at that time and included protections that limited future federal prosecution connected to the conduct covered by the deal. Many of the victims later said they were never informed that the agreement was being finalized. When the terms became public, outrage quickly followed. After years of investigation, after dozens of interviews, after what many believed was a strong case, the outcome looked very different from what investigators had expected. In 2008, Jeffrey Epstein was sentenced to 18 months in the Palm Beach County Jail. On paper, it appered to be a prison sentence. In reality, the conditions were highly unusual.
Have you ever had a personal relationship with Donald Trump?
What do you mean by personal relationships?
Have you socialized with him?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18?
Though I'd like to answer that question, at least today, I'm going to have to assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, sir.
After serving only a portion of his sentence, Epstein was granted work release for much of the day, allowing him to leave jail to work from an office before returning in the evening. The arrangement drew widespread criticism. Many legal experts, former prosecutors, and victims' advocates argued that ordinary defendants convicted of comparable offenses would not have received similar treatment. The perception that Epstein had received extraordinary leniency became one of the defining controversies of the case. Questions echoed across the country. Was this simply the result of skilled defense attorneys? Or had Epstein's immense wealth, influence, and connections helped shape the outcome? For years, those questions remained unanswered. And while the public believed the story was over, Jeffrey Epstein was already rebuilding his life, still wealthy, still connected, and, astonishingly, still welcomed in some of the world's most exclusive circles. For most convicted sex offenders, a criminal conviction marks the end of their public influence. Careers collapse, business partners disappear, friends distance themselves, and the opportunities that once seemed endless vanish almost overnight. But Jeffrey Epstein's story didn't follow that pattern. After completing his sentence in 2009, he registered as a sex offender, a designation that publicly identified him as someone convicted of sex crimes involving a minor.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years.
Remarks once again trying to slander President Trump left and right when you're the one who was taking money from one of Epstein's closest confidants, I believe, I could be wrong, correct me, Reid Hoffman, who was with Jeffrey Epstein on multiple occasions. And the senator sitting right next to you tried to block the flight logs from being released.
Yet, despite that conviction, Epstein quickly returned to a lifestyle that looked remarkably similar to the one he had enjoyed before his arrest. His private residences remained. His staff continued working. His private aircraft still traveled between his properties. And perhaps most surprising of all, many influential people continued to associate with him. For the public, it raised an uncomfortable question. How could someone with a criminal record so widely reported continue moving through elite social circles? Over the following years, photographs and reports continued to place Epstein in the company of politicians, business executives, academics, and celebrities. It's important to distinguish one fact from another. Being photographed with Jeffrey Epstein, or even meeting him socially, does not by itself imply involvement in criminal activity. Many individuals who crossed paths with Epstein have never been accused of any wrongdoing. However, what drew attention was not simply who knew him. It was that a convicted sex offender still appeared able to gain access to influential environments where most people expected he would no longer be welcome.
Is your money dirty money? If you look, I just asked a question. Is your money dirty money?
No, it's not. So, in fact,
why is it not dirty money?
Because I earned it.
Some former associates publicly distanced themselves. Others said they had ended contact after learning more about his conduct. Still, questions persisted. Why had so many people overlooked the warning signs? And why had some relationships continued even after his conviction? Those questions would only grow louder in the years ahead. Although Epstein appeared to have rebuilt much of his life, the legal story was far from over. Several victims refused to accept that the 2007 plea agreement had brought justice. They continued speaking publicly. Civil lawsuits were filed. Investigative journalists kept digging into court records, interviewing witnesses, and uncovering new information. Each new report added another piece to a puzzle that many believed had never been fully investigated. The pressure was slowly building, not inside Epstein's mansion, but in newsrooms, courtrooms, and among the victims who refused to remain silent. Then, nearly a decade after Epstein's plea deal, everything changed.
We also found flats where he housed some of the women, and credit card receipts show how he paid for their lives. Plus, there was travel in and out of the UK, and yet there has never been a full police investigation into his activities or any of the people who helped him.
In 2018, investigative journalist Julie K. Brown of the Miami Herald published a groundbreaking series of reports examining the Epstein case.
2005, I guess. Is that the year that some girls started coming forward and talking to the police in Florida?
Right,
in
Palm Beach.
Palm Beach. Tell me what happened. Who were the first girls who were brave enough to do that, and how were there? You know, we have a culture now where there's a lot of issues about people not being believed, which discourages people, victims, from coming forward. What were their claims, and how were those claims treated by the police when they came forward?
The local Palm Beach police took the case very seriously. They actually did a masterful investigation of this case because
She interviewed victims, reviewed thousands of pages of documents, and highlighted how many believed the criminal justice system had failed them. The investigation reignited public interest around the world. Questions that many thought had been buried returned to the headline. Why had the plea agreement been so favorable? Had all potential evidence been fully investigated? And could Jeffrey Epstein finally be held accountable? For the first time in years, the spotlight was back on him. Only this time, federal prosecutors were watching too. By 2019, the tide had turned. Years of investigative journalism, civil lawsuits, and persistent efforts by survivors had brought Jeffrey Epstein back into the national spotlight. Federal investigators began reviewing evidence that went beyond the earlier Florida case. They examined witness statements, court documents, financial record, travel logs, and information gathered from previous investigation. At the same time, more women came forward publicly.
And what offences could they have committed? And of course, importantly, is this still going on with others? But actually, people are outraged that somebody came forward and said, I was trafficked by this man, and yet he was just allowed to carry on. Who in the police made that decision?
Describing experiences they said had occurred years earlier. Although many of the allegations dated back decades, prosecutors believed they had enough evidence to pursue a new federal case. For the survivors, it was a moment many thought would never come. After years of silence, the justice system was taking another look. And this time, the investigation would not be limited to a single state. It would become a federal prosecution. On the evening of July 6, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein's private jet landed at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey after arriving from Paris. Federal agents were waiting.
Were you sexually abused as a minor?
Wait, again?
Were you sexually abused as a minor?
You know, I'd like to respond to all your, if any, questions seem to be relevant, but I would like to respond to any relevant question at this time. However, my attorneys have counseled me that I cannot provide answers to the questions relevant to this lawsuit today. I must accept their advice or risk losing my Sixth Amendment right to effective representation. Accordingly, then, I assert my Fifth, Sixth, and 14th Amendment right to the United States Constitution.
As soon as Epstein stepped off the aircraft, he was arrested. 2 days later, prosecutors unsealed a federal indictment in New York. The allegations centered on the exploitation of underage girls during the early 2000s, with prosecutors describing what they believed was a years-long pattern of abuse. Soon after his arrest, federal agents searched Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. Investigators reported recovering large quantities of evidence, including photographs, electronic devices, and other materials that would become part of the government's case. For the first time in more than a decade, Jeffrey Epstein faced the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. Unlike the earlier state case in Florida, these were federal criminal charges. Prosecutors accused Epstein of operating a scheme in which underage girls were recruited and transported to his residences, where they were allegedly exploited. If convicted,
Jeffrey Epstein was under house arrest for the molestation of underage girls at the exact time he was abusing me.
He abused so many girls after 2009 at the same exact time that I was asking the government why he got the deal and why they violated my rights.
he faced the possibility of a lengthy prison sentence. The case represented a dramatic shift from the controversial plea agreement reached years earlier. This time, there would be no immediate deal, no work release program, no unusually light sentence. Federal prosecutors made it clear they intended to take the case to trial. For many survivors, it felt as though justice, delayed for years, might finally be within reach. News of Epstein's arrest spread across the world within hours. Television networks interrupted regular programming. Newspapers placed the story on their front pages. Social media erupted with questions, debates, and renewed scrutiny of Epstein's connections to powerful figures. Many praised the federal prosecutors for reopening the case. Others wondered why it had taken more than a decade after his first conviction for such serious charges to be brought. Survivors expressed cautious optimism. Some said they finally felt heard. Others remained skeptical, fearing that Epstein's wealth and influence might once again help him avoid accountability. But this time, there was a sense that history might be different. The evidence had been gathered.
Jeffrey Epstein is Pizzagate. 10 years ago, Pizzagate was by far the #1 trending topic on Twitter. But the claim of pedophile elites who preyed on children was so insane that Pizzagate was shrugged off as a wild fever dream of a conspiracy theory. I was the first mainstream reporter to dare give the facts surrounding Pizzagate. My corporate career was destroyed over it, so what? My professional reputation was obliterated, that wasn't fun. And I wasn't the only one. Anyone who dared to suggest that this might be true was blacklisted, shadow banned, or thrown off of social media. But then, just days ago, the largest dump of Epstein files revealed what some of us have been telling you for a decade.
The indictment had been filed. The trial was approaching. For the first time in years, Jeffrey Epstein appeared to have nowhere left to run, or so the world believed. In the weeks following his arrest, Jeffrey Epstein was held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan while awaiting trial. If convicted, he faced the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison.
Mr. Epstein, for the record, you understand you're being recorded?
I understand.
All right, where were you the night of June 28th?
I was at my house in Palm Beach. I've already said that.
Anyone who can verify that?
My staff.
You have the law.
What are you, class 3 sexual predator?
Tier 1.
Was tier 1's the highest and worst?
No, I'm the
lowest.
I'm the lowest. Your child's life.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question.
Sorry.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Because you have all the attributes. You're incredibly smart. You remember the devil is somebody knows.
Smart?
The devil's brilliant. You read Milton's Paradise Lost.
No, the devil scares me.
On July 23, 2019, Epstein was found unconscious in his cell with injuries to his neck. Officials investigated the incident, but the exact circumstances were never conclusively established publicly. Afterward, he was placed on suicide watch.
A new analysis of surveillance video by CBS News shows a partial view of what may be someone possibly headed up to Epstein's cell tier the night he died.
And this was the vow of then Attorney General Bill Barr.
We will get to the bottom of what happened, and there will be accountability.
Under standard procedures, inmates on suicide watch receive increased observation and are housed under stricter conditions designed to reduce the risk of self-harm. Several days later, however, Epstein was removed from suicide watch and returned to a special housing unit. That decision would later become one of the most closely examined aspects of the case. No one knew it then, but Jeffrey Epstein had less than 3 weeks to live. During the early morning hours of August 10, 2019, correctional officers discovered Jeffrey Epstein unresponsive in his jail cell. Attempts to revive him were unsuccessful. He was pronounced dead later that morning. News spread across the globe within minutes. The man whose trial promised to answer years of questions would never appear in court. Within hours, speculation exploded across television, newspapers, and social media. What had happened inside one of America's most secure federal detention facilities? And how could one of the highest-profile prisoners in the country die while awaiting trial? An autopsy was conducted by New York City's Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. The official ruling concluded that Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide by hanging. The United States Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation later reviewed the circumstances surrounding his death.
Final question. In your opinion, not in your reporting, in your opinion, do you think Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide?
No.
Wow.
No. He did not. He didn't have the wherewithal to do it himself. He just didn't. He had a butler that tied his shoes for him. Also, it was too soon. You know, he was only in that jail for a month. And he had a good chance, by the way, of beating that case based on the same argument that Maxwell is using right now to get out of her case, to get out of her criminal charges. So he had a chance to beat this. So I think it was way too soon for him.
In 2023, the Justice Department's Inspector General released a detailed report that found no evidence that anyone entered Epstein's housing unit with the intent to harm him. The report concluded that a combination of procedural failures and negligence created an opportunity for the suicide to occur. Legally and officially, Epstein's death remains classified as a suicide, but that conclusion did not end the debate. In many ways, it was only the beginning. Public skepticism emerged almost immediately.
You said Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. People don't believe it.
Well, I mean, listen, they have a right to their opinion, but as someone who has worked as a public defender, as a prosecutor, who's been in that prison system, who's been in the Metropolitan Detention Center, who's been in segregated housing, you know a suicide when you see one, and that's what that was.
He killed himself. You want me to get, I've seen the whole file. He killed himself.
Not because of a single piece of evidence, but because of a series of unusual failures that occurred on the night of Epstein's death. He was one of the most closely watched inmates in the United States. His case involved powerful people. His upcoming trial attracted worldwide attention. Given those circumstances, many expected extraordinary security measures. Instead, investigators found repeated breakdowns in basic jail procedures. Those failures fueled years of public debate and countless theories. However, it's important to distinguish skepticism from evidence. While many people continue to question the circumstances, no publicly verified evidence has established that Epstein was murdered. Subsequent investigations documented a series of significant failures inside the facility. Correctional officers did not complete required inmate counts at the scheduled intervals. Records were falsified to indicate that checks had been performed when they had not. Epstein was alone in his cell after his cellmate had been transferred. Investigators also found that staffing shortages, employee fatigue, and procedural violations contributed to an environment where required safeguards broke down. These were not isolated mistakes. They reflected broader operational problems inside the jail. For many observers, those failures were difficult to ignore. Jeffrey Epstein died before a jury could hear the evidence, before survivors could testify at trial, and before many of the questions surrounding his network could be answered in court. His death closed one case, but it did not end the search for accountability. In the years that followed, investigators, journalists, and the public would continue asking a larger question.
Hey, thanks for watching, guys. If you really enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button and leave your comment below, as I'm going to upload more videos like this. If you enjoy our documentary, there is more coming very soon on this channel.